Before the league noticed, before the rankings shifted, before conversations ever began to form, there was already belief. Not the loud kind, not the kind fueled by hype, headlines, or expectation, but the kind built quietly through repetition, patience, and time. Jalen Johnson's story does not begin with superstardom. It begins with understanding who you are before anyone else decides for you. From the very beginning, his game showed balance. He had the length, the coordination, the instincts that coaches look for immediately. But more than physical tools, there was restraint. He did not chase highlights or force moments. He let the game come to him, trusting that real impact does not always announce itself loudly. That understanding shaped how he played and how he grew. That approach followed him through his earliest years in basketball. Talent was evident, but noise never fully arrived. Coaches noticed, scouts paid attention. Yet the broader basketball world remained undecided. Was he a scorer, a facilitator, a project, or something still forming? Jalen never rushed to answer those questions. He kept playing, kept learning, and kept developing without forcing an identity before it was ready. High school basketball became a proving ground for discipline rather than dominance. He moved through games with calm confidence, never panicked by expectations, and never distracted by projections. There was something deliberate about the way he played, a sense that he understood time and was willing to let it work in his favor. That understanding would matter even more when the stage grew larger. Then came Duke. Duke is not just a college basketball program. It is a pressure chamber. Every possession is magnified, every mistake remembered, every decision questioned. Some players arrive needing validation and proof. Jalen arrived already grounded. He played within structure, within flow, and within himself. He did not hunt shots or chase moments. He trusted his feel for the game. 13 games was the entire Duke chapter. To outsiders, leaving early felt sudden, unfinished, even risky. Why leave a program that creates stars? Why step away before the story felt complete? But that question assumes everyone needs the same path. For Jalen Johnson, turning 19 brought clarity. The NBA was no longer a distant idea. It was a calculated decision. There was no spectacle, no farewell tour, no dramatic announcement. Just a quiet step forward, backed by belief. Belief in his work, belief in his trajectory, belief that development does not need permission. That belief would be tested immediately because the NBA does not reward potential. It rewards readiness, and readiness is not always visible on the scoreboard. Jalen's rookie season was humbling. Minutes were limited. Opportunities were scarce. The box score offered little reassurance, and the spotlight stayed elsewhere. This is where many players lose themselves. They press, force shots, and chase relevance instead of growth. Jalen did not. He treated every moment as education rather than judgment. He studied the league, its pace, its spacing, its timing. He learned where influence actually matters. Instead of fighting the speed of the NBA, he adapted to it. Instead of demanding attention, he earned trust. Every practice, every defensive rotation, every rebound that turned into a fast break added another layer to his understanding. While the league moved fast around him, Jalen stayed patient. He understood that growth is not linear and that progress is not always loud. The early years did not reflect who he was becoming, but they were shaping him all the same. Quietly, deliberately, without shortcuts. This was not a story of instant arrival. It was a story of preparation. Preparation that went unnoticed until it became impossible to ignore. While others chased moments, Jalen Johnson was building a foundation, brick by brick, season by season. There was no rush and no panic, only patience. And when opportunity finally arrived, it did not surprise him. Because long before the league was watching, long before the numbers changed and the conversations shifted, Jalen Johnson had already been ready. This is where the story truly begins. The NBA does not ease players into relevance. It demands adaptation immediately, and for many young players, the transition is unforgiving. For Jalen Johnson, the early years in the league were not about arrival. They were about adjustment, new speed, new spacing, new physicality. The game looked familiar, but it moved differently, and learning that difference took time. His rookie season passed quietly. Minutes were limited, opportunities were narrow, and the margin for error was small. 22 games, just over 2 points per night. On paper, it looked insignificant. To casual observers, there was nothing to latch onto. But the box score has never been a reliable measure of development, especially for players learning the league from the inside out. What the numbers did not show was efficiency. When Jalen was on the floor, he made good decisions. He shot over 50% from the field, not because he was hunting easy looks, but because he understood where his shots should come from. He didn't force attempts or rush possessions. He played within himself, even when the role was limited. The league noticed this quietly. Coaches notice discipline. Teammates notice reliability. Trust begins forming long before attention arrives. Jalen's second season brought more games, but still little freedom. 14 minutes per night, 5 points, 4 rebounds. Again, the numbers whispered instead of shouting. This is the stretch where many careers begin to unravel. Players press to prove they belong. They take shots that don't fit their role. They chase relevance instead of growth. Jalen Johnson did the opposite. He treated every minute as an opportunity to learn rather than a verdict on his future. He studied the flow of NBA games, how defenders rotate, how passing lanes open and close, how timing matters more than speed. He learned when to push the pace and when to slow the game down. He learned that impact is not always loud, and that consistency earns more minutes than urgency. Instead of fighting the speed of the league, he adapted to it. Instead of demanding attention, he earned trust. Every practice mattered. Every defensive rotation mattered. Every rebound that turned into a controlled possession mattered. While others measured progress by points per game, Jalen measured it by comfort. Comfort with spacing, comfort with reads, comfort with responsibility. That comfort began to show as his role slowly expanded. By his third season, the quiet work started surfacing in ways that could no longer be ignored. The minutes increased. The confidence followed. 16 points per game, nearly 9 rebounds. Efficiency intact. This was not a sudden breakout. It was a release. The game began to slow down, and Jalen stopped reacting to possessions and started anticipating them. Rebounds turned into fast breaks. Fast breaks turned into advantages. He wasn't just finishing plays anymore. He was initiating them. This is where patience becomes visible. The quiet years layered his game without stripping away discipline. Defense remained a priority. Rebounding became more purposeful. Decision-making sharpened. He wasn't trying to be everything at once. He was becoming more of himself. By the time opportunity widened, he didn't hesitate. There was no shock to his system, no scramble to adjust. He had already adjusted. The league didn't suddenly discover Jalen Johnson. It caught up to him. The quiet years had taught him how to survive without validation, how to stay focused without spotlight, how to keep improving when progress was invisible to everyone else. Those lessons mattered more than early praise ever could. Players who skip this phase often burn bright and fade quickly. Players who endure it learn how to last. Jalen Johnson learned how to last. He learned how to contribute without forcing his presence and how to impact games even when the ball was not in his hands. The quiet years did not limit him. They refined him. They prepared him for responsibility instead of overwhelming him with it. And when the league finally widened his lane, he stepped into it with calm assurance. The foundation was set. The noise had not arrived yet, but the structure was strong. And once a structure is strong, everything built on top of it becomes more stable. The league was about to see what patience looks like when it finally meets opportunity. The 2021 NBA draft did not explain itself immediately. When those players first entered the league, the story felt unsettled. Expectations were high, but clarity was slow to arrive. Some players flashed early, others struggled. Opinions shifted constantly, and early judgments came fast, as they always do. At first glance, the draft looked uneven. Cade Cunningham carried the weight of being selected first overall. Scotty Barnes emerged quickly with versatility and impact. Evan Mobley showed defensive brilliance. Franz Wagner grew quietly into reliability. Josh Giddey brought creativity. Alperen Sengun brought skill and feel. Austin Reeves arrived without being drafted at all and forced the league to take notice. And somewhere inside that mix, Jalen Johnson continued working without urgency. This was not a draft defined by one dominant star. It was defined by depth, by players who developed at different speeds and revealed themselves over time. That distinction mattered because it reframed what success looked like for this class. While early conversations focused on who would peak first, Jalen focused on sustainability. His game was not built to spike and crash. It was built to layer. Each season added something new without stripping away what already worked. Defense remained the foundation. Rebounding became more purposeful. Finishing improved. Decision-making sharpened. And eventually, the shooting arrived. Not as a gimmick, but as a tool. A way to stretch defenses. A way to punish hesitation. A way to expand his impact without forcing the ball. The handle tightened. Reads became quicker. Jalen began seeing plays one step ahead instead of reacting in the moment. This is where growth becomes visible not just in numbers, but in control. Within the context of the 2021 draft, this mattered. While some players were adjusting to stardom and attention, Jalen was adjusting to responsibility. He wasn't chasing the league. He was learning how to influence it. This is how draft classes separate themselves over time, not by headlines, but by relevance. Who is still shaping games years later? Who is still growing? Who is still trusted? By his third and fourth seasons, Jalen Johnson answered those questions quietly. 16 points became 19. Minutes became roles. Roles became expectations. Expectations became consistency. The draft that once felt uncertain began to feel historic. Not because of one superstar, but because of how many players found their lane. This is where the narrative changes. He became the kind of player teams had to account for. Someone who extended possessions, covered mistakes, and created options for others. His presence raised the floor of everyone around him. Within the larger story of the 2021 draft, that mattered more than who peaked first. Because drafts are not judged by beginnings, they are judged by staying power. As the seasons passed, one thing became increasingly clear. The 2021 draft did not just produce stars, it produced foundations, players who could anchor systems instead of floating through them. Jalen Johnson was one of those foundations. The league was no longer catching up to him. It was planning for him. And once the league starts planning for you, you are no longer developing in the background. You are arriving. Every career reaches a moment when preparation meets permission. For some players, it happens early. For others, it happens all at once. For Jalen Johnson, it happened precisely when the work demanded it. This was no longer about flashes or potential. This was about production, responsibility, and trust. The minutes increased, and instead of hesitation, there was command. The ball no longer felt heavy in his hands. Possessions didn't rush him. He saw the floor clearly and moved with purpose. What had once been limited opportunities became sustained involvement, and the numbers followed naturally. 16 points turned into 19. Rebounds climbed into double digits. Assists followed as his read sharpened. But the most important change was not statistical. The game slowed down. Jalen Johnson was no longer reacting to the NBA. He was shaping it. He stopped thinking possession to possession and started seeing sequences. A rebound was no longer just a stop. It was a chance to ignite momentum. A defensive rotation wasn't just coverage. It was the first step toward an advantage. He wasn't just finishing plays anymore. He was initiating them. This is where players separate themselves. Many can score when given touches. Fewer can elevate everyone around them. Jalen began doing both without forcing control. He attacked when the lane opened. He passed when help arrived. He punished indecision and rewarded movement. His presence changed the geometry of the floor. Defenses could no longer ignore him, but focusing on him came at a cost. Space opened elsewhere. Timing improved. Suddenly, the offense felt layered instead of predictable. This shift was especially clear alongside the team's primary playmaker. What had once been a search for a complementary piece became a partnership built on shared pace and vision. Jalen didn't just finish actions, he extended them. He caught in motion, he kept defenses shifting, he made the extra read without hesitation. That balance is rare. Players often chase breakout moments by demanding the ball. Jalen absorbed responsibility without hijacking the offense. That restraint made him more dangerous, not less. As the production continued, attention arrived. Broadcasts began mentioning his name more often. Analysts revisited earlier assumptions. How did this happen so quickly? The answer was simple. It didn't. This breakout was years in the making. Every quiet minute, every limited role, every possession where patience won over urgency. All of it fed this moment. When opportunity widened, he stepped into it without panic, because he had already been preparing for space long before it was given. For a stretch, his impact placed him among the league's most productive players. Not in projection, in output. The conversation shifted. He was no longer discussed as a promising piece. He was discussed as a pillar.